Welcome to Gathering Folds. Today we'll be demonstrating how to fold a 40-fold grid. So that's a division of 5 and 3 divisions of 2. And this will demonstrate the one thing that you need to know to fold any odd division grid. So for the divisions of 5, I'm going to want guide marks at 1 and 4 division. So I'm going to go ahead and fold a grid of quarters. I make sure the points at the ends are good first, and then firm up the line in the middle, and then use the bone folder to crease it nice and hard. So there's 2 of my quarters on that side. And what I do for all of my grids is crease them in both directions. So now that I have done all valley folds on this side, I flip it over and reverse those creases. One of the things that I'm picky about with grids is getting all of the creases in the same initial fold orientation. So you can see here on the back that these lines that have been folded have a bit of a raised mark because of the bone folder, and so I want to make sure that I'm only using the bone folder on one side of the paper. I just do that for consistency. There's no accuracy reason to do that, and then you can choose at the end whether you want the grid to be more or less visible on your final tessellation. What I like to do is have it more visible so people can see how it's done and how much effort went into it, but it's one of those things that everyone has to figure out for themselves, precisely how they want to do it. Okay, so now that I've got my grid of quarters, my 4-fold grid in both directions, then I'm going to mark my reference point for the fifths. So I've got 1 division up top, you can see 1 out of the 4, and then 4 on the bottom. So my reference diagonals are going to be from this corner to this corner, and from this corner to this corner. Now I know that those points are both those lines are gonna intersect in this box, so I'm only going to score where the actual point is, because I don't want these diagonals on my finished grid. So that's about where I think it'll end up on the main diagonal. And let's see if I'm right. So I'm lining up my corners, making sure my accuracy is good. but not actually creasing them. And then finding the intersection there and making a nice firm crease. So now I've got that creased in both directions and I can start to fold. So within this square, there's going to be 5 divisions, and I know that there's going to be 1 here at the top and 4 at the bottom. And yeah, that is because partially of where it is on there, but also I know for the full sheet, if we're ignoring the fact that we just have this. Okay. Pause, 2, 3. Okay. Now that I've got my 2 creases that intersect there, I'm going to use my knowledge that this side that has the 4 is going to have 4 divisions under this point, and this with the 1 is just going to be the single 5th. So I'm going to bring my bottom edge all the way up until I meet that point, making sure that all the other lines are aligned, because you don't want to be rotated around that point. And come down, prep, crease, flatten. Okay, so now I know that that line is half of 4, and so there's 2 and 2, and I'll go ahead and fold those now. I'm going to reverse this crease so I can bring it up to the initial intersection. And you can see that falls exactly under the other 5th. Great. So now I've got 1, 2, 3 fifths, which leaves 2 on this end. Rotate around, and this crease will go exactly through the intersection point, like so. And now I will reverse all of those creases. Okay, so that's one direction. Now for the other. I'm simply going to rotate the paper, and since I used the main diagonal as one of my diagonal lines for marking the intersection, I don't have to come up with a new reference point. I can just use the same one again. So I'm going to take this bottom edge up to the intersection, making sure that everything is well aligned and square. And if you get to the intersection and you go to flatten and your paper doesn't agree with you, it doesn't want to go flat, that probably means you're a bit rotated around that point. So just straighten up a bit more and try again. So the next crease is taking this bottom line up to this point, which is halfway between the bottom and here, which we know has 4 divisions. So I'm going to divide that in half. And then I'll reverse this crease and take it up to that same reference point. And again, you can see that those are pretty exactly aligned as we want. And now opening up, rotating around, so my reference point is down here. I'm going to take the bottom and fold up to our latest crease. And again, that will pass exactly through the reference point. And now to reverse the creases of the fifths that I haven't already. Great. So now I've got fifths on here, say here, 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 and here, overlaid onto a grid of fourths. Now I'm simply going to fill in the rest of the fourths between the fifths. So you can see with this fifth here, it already has one line that's a fourth in it. And this one has the half. So I'm going to go through and do the halves and the quarters, and then I'll go to the other direction and do the same. At this stage, I think it's worthwhile to do all of the iterations needed on one direction so you don't forget which lines are which. And if you're doing this for the first time and you are worried about making a mistake here, it can be helpful to mark which lines are which, maybe even before you put in the reference point, so that you can be confident in knowing which are your fifths and which are your fourths. So here you can see that I'm doing things a little bit differently than I had been. Well, not super differently. On the edge, I'm taking one side up to meet my reference for the area I'm folding in half. But then for the next one, instead of taking this point to the reference beyond, I'm taking this fifth line and simply taking that up to the next fifth. And now to reverse those creases. Okay, so you can see I've got mostly tenths and some 20ths here. So I'm going to fold all my tenths in half to get a uniform grid of 20ths. And this time I will take the edge up to the next reference when the strip that you're folding gets thin enough relative to its width, it can be very useful to use 3 grid spacings like I'm doing here, or when I get smaller, even use 5 to get a good length, so you're not constantly shifting and ending up with a wavy crease. So this next one is already done for us, so I'll move on to the following. And don't worry if you're moving slower than I am. I've done this literally hundreds of times. Not necessarily 40ths, but a lot of grids. And trust me, I'm nowhere near the fastest gridder out there. So what I usually do to make the time go by is listen to podcasts or sometimes watch YouTube videos, but that usually makes the gridding take longer because I'm looking up a lot. Now here, so this next one is done for us, but instead of folding this piece to the edge of the paper, I'm just going to rotate it around and fold the edge up to that crease I was previously using. And finally, the last of the 20ths on this side. And to reverse. And now for the other direction, exactly the same way. So first, to identify the fifths, they are here, 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 and here. And I know they're on the outside of these two because the fourths are going to necessarily be larger than fifths because the denominator is smaller. And so they're pretty easy to find. 2 on the outside and 2 on either side of the center line. And so I'm going to fold my tenths first and then my 20ths. The remaining tenths are here, so I'm going to feed them ground. So now it's time for the 20ths on this side. And you might be wondering, why the heck are we folding a 40-fold grid? Why aren't we using 32? Why aren't we using like 48 or something that's a little easier than fifths? Just so happens that I'm folding a tessellation that is going to have a 3x3 grid of individual pieces that are around 11 grid spacings, and I wanted to leave a decent amount of space between them and a decent amount of space at the border, so you very quickly get to, so it requires around 33 to do. I'm going to do a variation, so we'll see how it actually turns out. But I wanted to leave plenty of border space and extra space in the middle so you can see what the heck is going on. And so recently I've been kind of defaulting to 48-fold grids to try out new things, but this one I could actually count beforehand how many grid spacings it would require and decided to go with the 40. Another one to do there before I rotate. Already done, so that's the other side. And last one for this round. And reverse. All right. There's the 20-fold grid, and we're going to do another division of 2 to make it 40-fold. And I'll speed through this so that you don't have to sit through the whole thing. Okay, so apparently the last video cut off at some point while I was finishing the gridding, but here we are at the end, and so we've got our raised ridges all on one side and the gentler valleys all on the other. And so now you can make your tessellation. I've got another video either out or out soon on how to make a compound squares variation, or I should probably say compound quadrilaterals variation tessellation with this particular sheet of paper. And you can go ahead and check that out next if you want to know how to do that one. Thanks for watching, and hope you join me again soon.